Hello, welcome back. Now we're in Unit 2, Chapter 2, talking about population. And the one thing we really want to wrap our heads around is where do people live and why do they live there? And so, what we're going to do here is take a look at some examples from around the world, take a look at a blank map first, and then see where do people live. And then hopefully by the end, you'll get a better understanding of where people live in the world and why they live there. So let's start off with China. China is a place where, it's very large, it has lots and lots of people, but do you really know where they live? So if you want to take a guess, a mental guess, hit pause now. Now that you've hit pause back, now let's reveal our answer. The darker the color, the more intense the population density. And so you can see that a lot of Chinese people live on the eastern coast and the southeast central portion of China. Keep all these things in mind. And if you look off to the western part of China, you notice that a lot of places are labeled uninhabited. Russia. Again, if you need to pause, pause now. Okay, now that you've unpaused, the most populated part of Russia is the far western side, huddled around Moscow on the quote unquote European side of Russia. India. As you notice, we're looking at big countries, very populated countries. We're examining where their populations are. So hit pause if you want to try to guess. Now you're back, and with India, you notice that the people of India are living kind of along the coastline, some pockets in the interior of the country, and in the northeastern part of India. How about Canada? Oh, Canada. What about Canada? Hit pause if you need to hit pause. Now you're back with Canada, and the people of Canada live really in the southern part. Not a whole lot of people living in the northern part. How about Brazil? Hit pause if you need to hit pause. Now we're back, and the population of Brazil is along the coastline. As you can see, a lot of population, whether it's the largest city, Sao Paulo, Rio de Janeiro, Brasilia, those major, they're all huddled along the eastern coast of Brazil. Indonesia, believe it or not, Indonesia is the fourth most populated country on the planet. 250 million plus people on the island chain of Indonesia. So where do they live? Hit pause. Now you're back, and the people of Indonesia, well, they're clustered on the island of Java. But if you look on Sumatra and up towards Malaysia, you're going to notice that there's a lot of people there too. There's not a lot of room for folks to go. And Indonesia is a volcanic island chain. So, those people are just really, really huddled into that area. Australia, crikey, mate, where do they all live? Pause. Unpause and you're back. The people of Australia living along the coast. I think you're starting to see a trend here. Whether it's the Wiggles, whether it's AC/DC, Nicole Kidman, Keith Urban, Hugh Jackman, they all came from the coasts of Australia. So, what are we noticing about where people typically don't live? People typically do not live in areas that are too wet. Believe it or not, too much water is a bad thing. Tropical rainforests do not have huge populations. Places that are too dry. I think that makes sense. No water for crops, no water for drinking. We just use a lot of water in our everyday lives, and if there's no water there, then guess what? You're not going to live there. Areas that are too cold. Now, with possibilism, yes, we can live in cold conditions, but that takes a lot of resources. It takes a lot of energy and actually costs a lot of money. So people typically, unless they have to, do not live in areas where it's too cold. And obviously too mountainous. It is very difficult to build in mountains. And so Denver, Colorado is an exception to the rule, being a mile-high city. Down in the Andes Mountains in Peru and Chile, there are some rare exceptions there, but really it's very, very uncommon that cities of any size are in mountainous areas. So, too wet, too dry, too cold, and too mountainous. Those are places people typically do not live. And an area that people typically have always lived is called an ecumene. And as you can see on the right hand side of this image, the ecumene has grown and grown and grown as the population of the world has grown and grown and grown. And so, as we take a look at a global map, 2/3 of all human beings on this planet live in four regions: East Asia, which is China, Japan, and the Koreas; South Asia, which is the Indian subcontinent, India, Pakistan, Bhutan, Nepal, Bangladesh; Southeast Asia, which is the Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, Vietnam area; and Europe, predominantly Western Europe. Those are where most people live on the planet. Now, a distant fifth place would be the northeastern United States and southeastern Canada. So we are in the fifth most populated area on the planet in terms of regions. So people typically live where there's water. People typically where it is temperate climate. People typically live near a coast. People typically live near where they can travel and where they can trade. That's where people live. And guess what? If you take a look at this global map, you can see there's a lot of places that are still inhabited. And for the most part, that's because the environment's not too hospitable. Environmental determinism says too hot, too dry, too cold, and too mountainous are places that you don't want to live. So we'll see you again.